Do you remember the first day you picked up a guitar? You tried to press a chord. Your fingers didn't fit the strings. The sound was muffled. Then you said something, quietly. Maybe I just don't have musical talent. And that sentence, perhaps it wasn't just spoken to the room. It was spoken to yourself. This video is about talent, about learning, about genetic advantage, and about why people give up much sooner than they think. Because in our lives, there are many things we don't try. But the interesting thing is this. Most of the time, we don't give up because we didn't try. We give up because we think we've tried. Trying once sometimes creates an identity. I'm not an athlete. I'm not a math person. I'm not a social person. I'm not creative. These sentences are not decisions. They are interpretations. But the mind stores them as if they were reality. No one comes into this world saying, I'm a numbers person. A child doesn't know what numbers are. A child doesn't know about artistic talent. A child isn't shy. A child just tries. They draw a house on paper. The line is crooked. The door is slanted. Another child next to them draws it straighter. The teacher approaches. Look how beautifully they drew this. The sentence is simple, but for the child it's not information. It's a comparison. And comparison demands an explanation in a child's mind. The child doesn't think their line came out straighter today. The child thinks they can do it. I can't. The first idea of talent is born here. A while later, it's physical education class. There's a race. One child is faster than the others. The other stays behind. No one talks about genetics. No one talks about practice. Only one sentence forms. I'm not a fast runner. This sentence is recorded. They are only 8 years old, but they've already started making the first decisions about their identity. I spent my childhood as an overweight kid, so I had a physique I wasn't happy in. At times like these, excuses like, I have bad genetics and I'll never look good, emerge. In reality, just putting in the effort and being disciplined was enough to solve this. But finding an excuse is easier. School doesn't actually teach knowledge. School teaches you to draw conclusions about yourself. You get a low grade on an exam. Your mind can produce two explanations. I haven't learned this topic yet, or I'm not good at this. The child's mind chooses the second because it's simpler. The human brain is inclined to give meaning to events not temporarily, but permanently. This is energy saving, but it has a price. The first math problem in your life was hard. You remember the moment you couldn't solve it. But there is something you don't remember. That day you didn't actually learn math. You made a decision about math. Think of a musical instrument. Day 1. Fingers hurt. Sound is bad. Rhythm is missed. Your brain interprets it this way. This is hard. But very quickly a second interpretation comes. It's hard because I don't have talent. These two thoughts are not the same, but they feel the same. And the human brain mistakes feelings for evidence. Think of your first time at the gym. You can't do the movement, your balance is off. Even though the weight is light, it feels heavy. At that moment, a decision forms. I'm not a sports person. But what actually happened is this. Your muscles had never done that movement before. The body is learning for the first time. Difficulty is not a mistake. Difficulty is the process itself. But the mind doesn't interpret it as a process. The mind interprets it as a misalignment, and it links that misalignment to identity. You start learning a language. In the first speaking attempt, you can't find the words. The sentence remains unfinished. The other person waits. A sense of shame forms. The mind makes the same deduction again. I can't learn languages. Whereas what actually happened, the brain hasn't become automated yet. But the brain doesn't measure performance. The brain measures alignment. People don't give up because of failure. People give up when they link failure to their identity. Being even 1% better than the day before can allow us to achieve great results over a long period. An interesting thing happens. Years later, someone asks you, "Did you ever try?" And you say, "I already tried." But what you actually remember isn't the learning process. What you remember is the initial discomfort. First experiences are deceptive, because the hardest part of learning is the beginning, and the performance at the start tells almost nothing about future performance. But the mind doesn't believe this. The mind wants speed, because speed looks like talent. Sometimes you watch someone. They learn quickly. They look comfortable. And you reach this conclusion. They have it. I don't. But there is something you don't see. You didn't see their beginning. You only saw their midpoint. This is why social media is so convincing. Because it never shows you anyone's first day. It always shows you the moment of mastery. And mastery looks innate. Someone plays the piano. It's fluid. It looks natural. You think, I can't play like that. But that person made the same sounds on day one. They are the only person who remembers those days. The human mind observes performance, but it imagines the process. And the imagined process is usually wrong. For years, people thought the same thing. Some are born good, some are not. This idea seemed logical, because observations seemed to support it. Two students in the same class. One solves the problem immediately. The other looks at it for a long time. The result seems obvious. One has the brain for it. But scientists wondered about something. If talent were entirely innate, people with the same genes should always show similar performance. So some research started in homes, not laboratories. Twins were studied. Same DNA, same beginning, but not the same result. While one sibling progressed in piano, the other remained average. While one sibling shined in sports, the other chose to quit. There was a small but critical detail here. The difference was not so much in genetics as in consistency. There was a long-term observation made in a music school. Students were followed for years. Who were the best? Teachers made predictions at the start. These are the most talented students. But years later, the result was different. It wasn't the students who looked natural at the beginning, but the students who continued for the longest time who became the best. This wasn't surprising. It was unsettling, because it meant this. The mastery we received might not be a starting advantage, but a duration of stay. One of the most useful books I can recommend on consistency is Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you've read the book, you can share your thoughts in the comments. In another observation studying chess players, something similar was seen. Some children were very slow in the first months. Their moves were delayed. Coaches thought they wouldn't progress. But a few years later, Saturi, the same children started winning tournaments. Because early performance was not the mirror of future performance. It was only the beginning. But people mistook the beginning for the result. The stories of athletes are similar. Many professional athletes were considered mediocre as children. Some were not even taken onto the squad. The decision made that day was correct according to that day's performance, but it was misinterpreted. Because performance is momentary, potential is temporal. People often confuse "I can't do it right now" with "I can never do it." The difference between these two sentences has determined thousands of lives for years. A child tries to shoot a basketball for the first time. The ball doesn't touch the rim. There are two possibilities. Either coordination hasn't developed yet, or this child is not a basketball player. The reality is the first. But the mind chooses the second. Why? Because the mind wants an explanation. and the fastest explanation is identity. The human brain doesn't like uncertainty. Uncertainty takes energy. Identity is energy saving. Saying, "I'm not good at this," is closing the process. When the process closes, the discomfort ends. But learning ends too. There are decisions made very early in many people's lives. At age 10, I can't draw. At 12, I'm not social. At 15, I'm not a math person. And the interesting thing is this. These decisions were made not with evidence, but with the first experience. So, is there a hobby you gave up on too early? Had you really put in the effort? When people encounter failure, they can do two things: change the behavior or change the identity. Changing the behavior is hard. Changing the identity is easy. So the mind says, "It's not my field." This looks like an explanation, but most of the time, it's an escape. The brain has a very simple rule. If it feels hard, you are misaligned. But the nature of learning is different. Learning always feels hard at the start, because the brain builds new connections. New connections take energy. Energy creates discomfort. The mind mistakes discomfort for danger, and it makes a wrong deduction. This is not for me. When you do something for the first time, your brain works slowly, because it hasn't become automated yet. But someone looking from the outside sees this. When you do something for the first time, your brain works slowly, because it hasn't become automated yet. But someone looking from the outside sees this. They are struggling. You see this too, and you make a decision about yourself. When you watch a musician, they look comfortable. But comfort is not the beginning. Comfort is the end of habit. One of the difficulties I experienced in the process of learning to play the guitar was that I could never press chords. All I did to overcome this was try again and again. Maybe I had to repeat it too many times, but each of my repetitions was better than the previous one. Struggling is often not a sign of failure. It is a sign of alignment. But people interpret struggling as a warning. This is why many people quit at the most critical stage of learning. That is, at the moment they could progress the most. There's a very common idea in society. Some are born good. This sentence looks harmless, but it has a consequence. If some are born good, some are not. And when a person puts themselves in the second group, they stop trying. This belief doesn't reduce motivation. It makes motivation irrelevant, because effort no longer seems to change the result. A child watches their friend who is good at drawing. They think, they have it. Then they watch themselves. I don't. And learning ends before it finishes. People often don't give up because they are lazy. They give up because they see it as meaningless. If the result is innate, effort seems illogical. And perhaps this is why. The most early giving up is seen in the areas where talent is most believed in. Small decisions made in childhood turn into invisible boundaries in adulthood. No one wakes up in the morning and says, "I won't try today." People don't decide not to try. People don't try things they already believe they can't do. This is visible when making a university choice. A department is considered. Then immediately this sentence comes, "I'm not that smart. I'm not that disciplined. I'm not that social." These sentences are often not evaluations. They are memories, echoes of an experience from 10 years ago. Many people make their career choice not according to their interest, but according to their avoidance. They don't choose what they want. They choose what they think they can't do. And the interesting thing is this. This choice is not conscious. It looks logical. But usually it is the continuation of an identity decision made a very long time ago. When reaching the 20s, something else happens. Comparison begins. A friend progresses quickly. Another catches early success. And the mind produces the same explanation again. They are talented. This sentence is comforting because it eliminates another possibility. Maybe they just didn't quit for a longer time. Social media reinforces this thought. The people you see on the screen are the result. The process is invisible. You see a drawing account. You see a musician. You see an athlete. And they all look natural. Looking natural is important because the mind mistakes fluid performance for being innate, whereas fluidity is the product of repetition. But repetition is the part that isn't shown. In a video, no one shares the wrong notes. No one uploads the failed attempts. No one talks about the first week. This is why the audience only sees the mastery, and mastery looks like talent. At some point, people say, "I'm late." But being late is often not temporal, it is decisional, because the real beginning is the moment you allow yourself to try. Many people have never tried a skill, but they still think they can't do it. This is interesting. The mind can produce a result even without actual experience, because a single experience from the past has taken the place of all future possibilities. In life, some things really can be genetic. Height, tone of voice, physical structure, but most skills are shaped following a decision. And that decision is often not made consciously. One day, in a small moment. Maybe in a classroom, maybe on a field, maybe while alone in a room. Something feels hard, and the mind says, "This is not for me." At that moment, relief comes, because the uncertainty ends. But with that relief, a possibility also closes. So what is it that you don't dare to try because of your excuses? People often don't quit because they failed. They quit because they misinterpreted failure. The first difficulty even becomes the final decision. And years later, the person says, "I could never do it." But perhaps the real sentence is this: they never continued. Doing something unsuccessfully and giving up on something early look the same from the outside, but they are different from the inside. One is a boundary. The other is an interpretation. And perhaps the identities you carry in many areas of life are not the result of evidence. They are the interpretation of first experiences. An instrument, a sport, a language, a profession, a relationship. Some might truly not be suitable for you, but some might have been closed too early. No single answer was given throughout the video, because this is not a solution video, it's a reminder about a thought you might have been carrying for years. It only leaves this possibility. Were you really unable to do it, or did you just decide too early?